Hi, my name is Sarah Davidson Squibb, and I'm here to share a workshop with you about crafting a professional narrative. I just finished doing this workshop for a number of UC Merced colleagues, and this video is going to be a truncated version of that workshop, but I hope you will find it helpful if you want to craft your own professional narrative. So I'm going to start off with a little bit about what our goals were for the session today. Our overarching goal is to ultimately create a narrative to confidently and concisely describe your professional work. And so today we were working on two specific things. One of those was articulating what are really the elements that are found in a professional narrative. And secondly, we gave ourselves some time to reflect and surface our own values, strengths, and experiences that can contribute to our professional narrative. So in this video, we're going to truncate those pieces, but you can always pause the video and give yourself some time to do some brainstorming. I'm also going to be sharing the other resources that you can use as part of this process. So going on to what is a professional narrative? A professional narrative is really just a statement about what you do, and we're going to give more clarity around that as we go along. The characteristics of a professional narrative is that we want it to be compelling, confident, and of course unique because it's going to be about your work and you. And the professional narrative is really intended to give you a way to speak about your work that is accessible to others, that they can understand what your work is. It's also intended to articulate who you are as a professional. And it goes beyond just stating your job title. In fact, our professional narratives usually don't use our job titles at all. And it shares why your work matters and how you are making a positive impact through your work. And ultimately, it generates confidence and interest in you and your work. So that's kind of our big picture goal of what we want our professional narrative to accomplish. So what is the framework of a professional narrative? What are the elements that are in it? And so the three elements that we're going to look at are what, how, and why. And in the what piece, we're going to be describing what we do and the impact of what we do. So again, we're trying to generate curiosity. We're not relying on our job title, and we really want to get at what that impact is. And we'll be trying that out together. We're also going to be looking at how do we accomplish this work. This might be the easiest part of the professional narrative. It's where we talk about our talents, our skills, our strengths, our expertise, our experiences that we're bringing to our work. If we want to get creative, we can also throw in a metaphor or some sort of image to help describe what we do. And we'll give some samples of that as we go along. And thirdly, the why behind our work. What is the because? Why do you do this work? What drives you to do the work? What is your motivation or purpose? The end goal. And we will be looking at some of those values and how we might express those. Now, I think as we talk about the what, how, and the why, it can be all sort of nice in theory and look easy to do, but sometimes when we try to apply it to ourselves, it's actually more challenging than we think. So what we did as a group together is we actually thought about this in the context of a lifeguard. What do they do? How do they do it? Why did they do it? And our group together, when we met, we brainstormed around some of these questions initially, just to kind of get us thinking about these questions. And I'm just going to share with you super briefly what some of the people wrote from our group. So what does a lifeguard do? Well, they keep people safe. They monitor swimmers in the water. Oh, interesting. Acts as authority. Help people in danger. Supervise the community. Be aware of surroundings. So those are some of the what pieces. And there's also a how aspect. How do they get their job done? Well, we hope they have some level of physical fitness, especially if they're going to rescue us. They probably have to know first aid. They have to be vigilant and focused. They have to be able to communicate and prioritize. Just a lot of different pieces that they're bringing together to be an effective lifeguard. And then for the why piece, why do lifeguards do the work that they do? So perhaps they're passionate both about swimming and safety. Maybe they really love being around the water or the outdoors. Maybe they like adventure. Maybe they just really also enjoy keeping people safe. Maybe they really like the environment, or they thrive in critical moments, so they're able to work in a crisis. So this is just some brainstorming around what a lifeguard does. We then moved into thinking about brainstorming for our own work. And this is where I shared with the group that there is a document that can be downloaded. So this link will be shared with you as well, where you can download it and just save it as a Word document on your own device. And this can be used to start brainstorming for your own professional narrative. So what we did next is we started filling this in personally, and we took about 3 to 5 minutes to do part 1 as a group. What do I do? So individuals were typing in what they did on their own device, and what impact do they make as a result of their job. So this is something that you can take a few minutes to do now or come back to and do later, but that was what we did in our workshop. Then we moved on to part 2. How do you do your work? And for this part, we actually broke up into some breakout rooms in Zoom, just in groups of 3. And then each person had just a couple minutes to share with 2 other people what some of their skills, talents, knowledge, experience, and strengths were. So that was a little bit of a group activity. This, of course, is something that you can just brainstorm on your own. So again, these skills or any of these pieces you can put into number 3. You can also be thinking about metaphors to describe your skills and experience. So maybe you're a person who's really good at making lemonade from lemons, so turning challenges into opportunities, for instance. So this is something that you could also put in here. After individuals talked to each other in the groups, they came back and they filled in information into this part 2. And I also shared with them some other resources for identifying their strengths. So for example, there's something called the Clifton Strength Finder Assessment. This assessment is actually, it costs money to do the personalized assessment, but the library has an ebook, which is the 20th anniversary edition of this, called Now Discover Your Strengths, which talks a lot about the assessment. And you may be able to just look at information about the Clifton Strengths Finder and get some additional inspiration for what you bring to your work. So for instance, this is just a 2-pager that describes the 34 strengths out of this assessment. So it names each of them and gives a little blurb about what that person exhibits. If you're an achiever, you have a lot of stamina and you work hard and you take satisfaction from being busy and productive. So in here you might find that you're a person who brings a lot of empathy to your work or a lot of focus to your work. So these might be other ideas for strengths. Also, the Clifton Strengths Finders are grouped into 4 domains. So if you did take the assessment, or if you can see yourself in some of these words and their descriptions, you might find out that you have a lot of these ones, say empathy, harmony, includer. So maybe you have very strong skills in relationship building. So I just kind of like this chart that shows these 4 domains and how these strengths connect to the 4 domains. So that's just a resource that you might want to use for identifying more of your strengths. Another thing that you can do, and this might be especially helpful since you're watching this video on your own and you weren't in those breakout groups, is you could also ask colleagues, family, friends to tell you more about what they perceive and see as your strengths and talents, because sometimes it's easier for other people to identify them in us than we identify in ourselves. So that's another strategy. So again, you could stop this video and take just a few minutes to brainstorm questions 3 and 4 under part 2. And if not now, you could always come back and take a closer look at this later. From there, we moved on to the third piece of brainstorming, which is, why do you do the work that you do? And this is really connecting to our values. What is the difference that you're trying to make? And I think some of these questions are really helpful. So what's your motivation or mission in your work? I really like this one. What about your work brings you joy or satisfaction? And again, what do you value? And then how does your work connect to those values? So this is a third piece. I also shared with the group some additional resources for identifying values. And so these are some hyperlinks just to some online resources. This first one has just a one-pager initially that lists out some values. All of these happen to just be pretty much one word or very short phrase values, but could be that you value risk-taking. Maybe you value inclusiveness or community or challenges. So again, this could help generate ideas for you. Also on here, I'm not going to click on all these links. I'm going to go down to this one, which you'll find lots of sort of business blogs talking about organizations and their values. And this just gives an example of like Squarespace values empowering individuals. So maybe you realize, oh, I also really value, say, mentoring individuals. Again, these are ideas that you might be able to use. Of course, they're not going to necessarily all apply to you, but they could be helpful as you answer questions 5, 6, and 7. So again, at this point, you could pause this video, take some time to brainstorm these key questions. At this point in the workshop, we stopped and shared some actual professional narratives to give examples and talked about the next steps before our follow-up meeting. Okay, so I'm going to return to our slide deck and kind of move forward through some of these slides because we worked through our brainstorming document. So samples, these were samples that were taken from individuals who were guest speakers or who were part of the UC We program that I was part of in 2019. So this is taken from LinkedIn, and the About section is essentially the professional narrative of this individual. And you can tell that, you know, this one is 3 sentences long, but it's a statement about what this individual does. And I think that this individual really leads with the why of her work by talking about her passion and that she's supporting certain kinds of institutions in their mission. And then she starts to get more into the type of work that she's doing, so tackling challenges and solving problems. It definitely speaks to some of her skills, such as solving problems, working in teams, and then continues on with some of her other skills and what she's, again, bringing to her workplace. So that's just one example. Another example is from another UC Merced colleague who was with me in the cohort. She did a really lovely job of crafting a professional narrative. Tomiko also really leads with what her purpose is. So what's sort of the big picture? So she's a passionate lifelong public service, and she's wanting to enhance the graduate and undergraduate student experience. And then she starts going into how she is doing that. She also mentions what she's doing. So she's leading a team of student affairs professional. And then she also talks about being a leader and some of these other skills such as advocacy. She also did a really great job of incorporating basically a metaphor. She refers to herself as an office historian. And I think that provides really nice context when she says, I'm analyzing and interpreting policy. That might not sound always like, super exciting work, but I think because she started with office historian, it's kind of a nice segue into this. And it's like, oh, I kind of get a sense of what she's doing. And then she ends out really nicely about serving others, solving problems, and coaching others are my life's work. And just a couple other samples. Someone else who was in our program who's at Berkeley, she actually leads with where she works. You don't necessarily have to do that, but she did that. Then she also moves into the big picture, her passion about why she's doing this work. And she's training the next generation of scholars, and then she talks about some other pieces. She also uses a bit of a metaphor here with glue, so holding together different constituents. So again, that provided me with a visual. She talks about a lot of the people that she's serving and a lot of her skills. So she's able to do research, she's able to publish and teach and consult. And I get a sense of other things that she does as part of her work and what she enjoys. So thriving on changes and opportunities and the ability to implement innovative ideas. So I kind of get excited about her work, and I feel like she really enjoys her work and is exuding enthusiasm. And then this last one from Tenny Frost, she leads with sort of some statements about herself. I suspect that these are from sort of another assessment. And then she has 3 statements that she put into these mini paragraphs. And hers is, again, a lot about her purpose and what she's trying to accomplish. And so she's cultivating meaningful connections. What she does is she's leading a dynamic team of professionals, and then it talks about what her focus is. And so again, these are fairly pithy, but they're giving this nice picture or snapshot of what someone does, what they're accomplishing, their impact, why it matters. And as you'll notice, their titles are not in this about section with a professional narrative. They're somewhere else in the LinkedIn profile. But we have a better sense of, hey, what might an executive director for development and alumni relations really do? Well, this is what she sees as her work. So it's nice to see some examples, because your next step is going to ultimately be creating your own professional narrative. So between now and our next session, there's a few things to do. One of those is to continue to brainstorm on that worksheet that I provided. And as you're brainstorming, you can, again, talk to colleagues, family, friends about some of your strengths. You can take advantage of those resources where it listed out different strengths and values, because that could provide you some ideas. And from there, you're going to want to craft your own professional narrative. So maybe it's going to be kind of 3 to 4 sentences where you address the what, the how, and the why. Again, there's no real specific order in which you have to do that, but you're addressing those elements. And again, you're trying to be compelling, have enthusiasm and confidence in what you're stating, but to give people really a sense of what you're doing and why and how. And then at our next session, we're going to be sharing those professional narratives with each other. I'm going to be starting off by sharing my own that I did for UCWE. And then we're going to just support each other in doing that. So I really encourage you to take the time to do it. This is where the hard work happens, is kind of sitting down and crafting those statements. But this is something, again, you could use on a LinkedIn profile. That's where I have mine, which I think is a nice place to surface it. There may be other social media places where you could use it, or pieces of it, or just in other contexts. So that, in short, is what we did in our workshop session. I hope that gives you a good sense of what a professional narrative is, how you can go about brainstorming to therefore create your own professional narrative to talk effectively about your work. So thanks so much for joining me. If you have questions, you can feel free to email me at sdavidson2@ucmerced.edu. And that's it for now. Thanks.